Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are now in a public hearing for the Standing Committee of Economic Development. My name is Robert Hawkins. I'm the MLA for Yellowknife Centre and the Chair of the Standing Committee of the Economic Development Committee. I will now ask members, starting on my far left, to introduce themselves, and we'll go around the table, and I'll start with Mr. George.
Good morning. I'm George Nearsu, member MLA for Mackenzie Delta. Good morning.
Good morning. Julia Morse, MLA for Frame Lake and Yellowknife.
Good morning. I am Kate Reed. I'm the MLA for Great Slave here in Yellowknife.
And I'm Shauna Morgan, MLA for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, everyone. So today we'll receive a public briefing on the Regional Economic Development Plans. So with the Industry, Tourism and Investment Minister, Caitlin Cleveland. Please note this meeting is being live streamed on the Assembly's social media site across the world to millions of subscribers. I would also like to remind members on this occasion to direct all questions through me, but we're all professionals around here fairly familiar with the process, so and that way we'll allow the process to recognize seamlessly, so we're all on the record. I will now pass it on to our presenter, so if you'd introduce your team and then jump straight into your presentation, we will then begin. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to committee members as well for the invitation to today's briefing provided in response to your letter from May of 2025. I am very pleased to introduce and to have with me here today Pamela Strand, Deputy Minister of ITI, or Industry, Tourism and Investment, Shauna Hamilton, Acting Assistant Deputy Minister of Economic Development, Scott Ray, Senior Economist, as well as my Ministerial Special Advisor, Nigel Woodridge. Mr. Chair, the Economic Opportunity Strategy, or EOS as we lovingly refer to it, was released in 2013 during the 17th Legislative Assembly. It was developed through a highly collaborative and partnership-driven approach with over 80 engagement sessions held across the territory and hundreds of stakeholders participating, submitting comments, and offering insights. The EOS emphasizes inclusivity, regional engagement, and shared ownership. At its core, the strategy aims to guide economic development in every region of the Northwest Territories, empowering Northerners with a clear emphasis on diversifying the economy and creating long-term economic opportunities. The EOS placed a strong emphasis on Indigenous business leadership and regional-driven decision-making. It has helped create tangible pathways to prosperity through targeted regional development, strategic infrastructure investments such as the commercial fish plant in Hay River, and focused growth in a number of priority sectors such as tourism, agriculture, and the arts. Mr. Chair, the EOS has become a foundational strategy that continues to inform policy and investment decisions. In short, the EOS built on the lessons of the past and ensured they translated into real ongoing initiatives, not just plans on paper. At this point, Mr. Chair, I'd like to turn the floor over to Deputy Minister Strand, who will take us on a journey, beginning with the Common Ground Strategy, released during the 14th Legislative Assembly and culminating in the present day with a slide presentation entitled Regional Economic Development Plans and the Economic Opportunities Strategy, and would be happy to answer questions of committee following the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And thank you for that. Deputy Minister, if you would lead us, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Committee, for being able to present a history of economic development planning in the Northwest Territories. So today, I'll talk a bit about the strategies through time, and then dive deeper into the relationship between the EOS and the REDPs, which is the Economic Opportunity Strategy and the Regional Economic Development Plans. The Common Ground Strategy that the Minister referred to was released in 2000 during the 14th Legislative Assembly and was a landmark economic roadmap for the Northwest Territories. It had a long-term vision through to this year, 2025. It emerged at a pivotal time after major land claims, the creation of Nunavut, and Indigenous self-government agreements, and focused on building a balanced, sustainable economy led by Northerners. At its core, Common Ground was about partnership, uniting governments, Indigenous organizations, industry, and communities to build a resilient, inclusive economy that respects both people and the land. It remains an important reference point as the NWT continues to balance development opportunities with the need for local leadership and long-term sustainability. I've also included it today because it was the starting point for the economic opportunity strategy, and it's interesting to reflect back on our vision from 25 years ago. One aspect of the vision that particularly stood out for me was there are resource development projects across the territories, some of them new, some of them established at the beginning of the new millennium and now winding down. Recognizing the need to adapt to changing economic realities, especially with the devolution of land and resource management from Canada to the NWT in 2014, the 17th Legislative Assembly prioritized a renewed economic vision, guided by the statement, quote, believing in people and building on strengths of Northerners, quote. The NWT Economic Opportunity Strategy, also known as the EOS, builds directly on the foundation laid by the earlier Common Ground Strategy in 2000. Both strategies shared the core objective of empowering NWT residents and communities to lead their own economic futures while reducing dependency on volatile resource sectors. Some achievements from Common Ground included expanding telecommunication services, increased business participation, Indigenous business participation. However, challenges remained, particularly in growing value-added industries and reducing dependency on imported goods and services. These experiences directly shaped the next phase of economic planning in the NWT. In response, the EOS was developed. It was developed through a highly collaborative and partnership-based approach. Our key partners in that were Canor, the NWT Chamber of Commerce, the Northern Aboriginal Business Association, the NWT Association of Communities, and GNWT was represented by ITI. The EOS emphasized inclusivity, regional engagement, and shared ownership by all stakeholders. At its core, the EOS guides economic development across all regions of the NWT. It focuses on building a more diversified economy to create longer-term stability while reducing reliance on non-renewable resources. The strategy works to strengthen Indigenous business leadership, local decision-making, at the same time as creating pathways for tangible prosperities through skill development, infrastructure investment, and growth in key sectors such as tourism, fisheries, arts, and renewable energy. Since devolution, the role of Indigenous governments has been even more critical. With expanded authority over land and resources, Indigenous governments are increasingly shaping regional economic priorities, advancing self-government objectives, and ensuring that economic opportunities align with community values and long-term sustainability. This alignment has made the EOS not only a GNWT framework, but also a shared roadmap to the territory's future. From Common Ground to the EOS, the GNWT has maintained a consistent commitment to inclusive growth and community-led opportunity. The EOS serves as a modern and adaptable framework shaped by lessons of earlier strategy. And it is one that can reflect the current realities of devolution, Indigenous self-government, and the transition beyond diamond mining. The EOS was a focus for two assemblies, the 17th and the 18th, and work continues through to the 20th. This will give you a bit of a timeline through time. So the EOS work began in 2012 under the guidance of a governance committee made up of key stakeholders. And as I mentioned, it was a collaborative and partnership-based approach. An independent four-member Economic Opportunities Advisory Panel was appointed to engage with residents, businesses, governments, and other stakeholders. The panel conducted over 80 public forums in over about a 6-month timeframe to listen to what Northerners thought of what the economic barriers were and where the opportunities were. Out of that came a What We Heard report, which compiled hundreds of contributions and put forward 90 actionable recommendations to guide the strategy. The final Economic Opportunity Strategy was released in October of 2013. It contained 117 concrete actions to be undertaken, each tied to clear objectives and targets. And that, from that point, moved on to implementation. And with recognition that success would depend on execution of these recommendations, not just the written strategy. So just to emphasize that the EOS was never created in a vacuum. we needed to ensure that other strategies were in place and that this didn't compete with them. So at the territorial level, the EOS was built to align with key GNWT initiatives and the broader national and regional frameworks. Alignment didn't stop there. We also drew heavily on broader frameworks such as Canada's Northern Strategy and Economic Action Plan. By grounding the EOS in the wider policy ecosystem, we made sure it was just not a standalone document, but a strategy that complemented, strengthened, and leveraged existing efforts, both within the territory and Canada. In August of 2014, the implementation plan was released to ensure that the 117 recommendations were translated into action. Progress reports have been tracked through a series of annual and multi-year reports, including the 2014-2015 Progress Report, 2015-2016 Progress Report, and the 2016-27 Progress Report, and following that, the 2016-2018 Summary Progress Report. These reports have helped maintain transparency and measure the real-world impacts of the strategy over time. The EOS established clear goals, as I've mentioned, and it focused on driving economic diversification. This was important to reduce our reliance on resource extraction and placed a strong emphasis on empowering Indigenous and local businesses to take leadership in economic development. And the ultimate objective was to build a more competitive, sustainable economy that delivers benefits to every region of the NWT. Out of the EOS, a number of strategies were born. The commercial fisheries strategy, the agriculture strategy, the film strategy, the petroleum resources strategy, the manufacturing strategy, as well as immigration initiatives through the NWT immigration strategy, also major investment for infrastructure like the Mackenzie Valley Fiber Link, that has improved connectivity and remote community. Also tourism. We've had a number of tourism strategies through time that have supported visitors across the economy. Most importantly, the EOS has not remained as a standalone project, but the deliverables from the EOS have been built into the annual work plans and mandate of government departments. That ensures this work is carried through year after year. So the EOS does still remain a long-term practical approach to building a series of diverse, self-sufficient northern economy sectors. While the EOS and its spin-off strategies firmly entrenched departmental work plans, ITI did continue through the pandemic to look at other areas of economic development and was the driver of these two strategies that you see on the screen here, priorities to critical minerals and the Innovation Action Plan. Both of these plans are still in the forefront of ITI's work today. Also through time have been a number of NWT Indigenous Leader Economic Forums. In 2024, ITI supported that forum that brought together over 40 NWT Indigenous leaders and over 50 experts to develop a united agenda to ensure that resource and infrastructure development in the NWT benefits the NWT peoples of the region. This was in follow-up to two other forums that were held in 2018 and 2019. The department also has helped with the development of regional economic development plans, which was a critical component of the EOS. The development of regional economic development plans, or REDPs, was also a commitment under the 19th Legislative Assembly. The REDP process recognized that every region is unique and each have their own strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. By working with major stakeholders in each region, the plan was for the REDPs to identify opportunities that could be implemented immediately to increase economic opportunities and activity, employment in all NWT communities for all stakeholders. The objective of the REDPs was to identify opportunities for people to start new businesses, to grow businesses, and to be a guide by all stakeholders and partners. Unfortunately, the department was not able to engage communities in every region the way that we had envisioned due to the pandemic, due to the wildfires and evacuations. Regardless, we managed to produce the REDPs. These were released in 2023 and are all available online. These represent foundational evergreen documents that can be enhanced and improved over time and guide regional opportunities. The EOS served us well, but time has passed. It has helped guide our economic diversification efforts over the past decade. The landscape also has shifted in the NWT. We've had devolution. We're implementing, devolution efforts. We have seen our resource sector changed drastically, the decline of diamond mining, the increase in interest in critical minerals. And the path ahead is one that we are now looking at to be done in partnership. The strategy has sunsetted, but we are now looking towards a new plan. The good thing is we're not starting from scratch. We will build on the EOS's foundation. It laid critical groundwork, including the development of sector-based approaches and early regional economic development planning. We are now focused on implementing tangible, on-the-ground actions through tools like the SEED program, Strategic Investments Program, and new investment attraction efforts. As part of this Legislative Assembly's mandate is to develop a new economic vision. This vision is in development. It reflects an urgency created by mine closures, the demand for economic reconciliation, and the opportunities ahead in critical minerals, clean energy, and community-led development. The post-EOS era is even more about partnerships, not top-down policy. Unlike earlier strategies, our current work emphasizes not directing economic growth, but aligning investments with our partners, with Indigenous governments, with community priorities across every region. The EOS may have sunsetted, but the work that it created has helped develop what we're currently accelerating. The transition from the EOS is not a pause, it's an evolution. We are redoubling our economic transformation efforts to ensure the NWT emerges stronger and more self-reliant. The NWT economy is basically at a crossroads right now. We are facing major transitions with the diamond mining sector, which has powered our GDP and employment for decades. The reality demands serious planning, not just to replace what's being lost, but to build something stronger and more sustainable. We see this as a turning point, not a collapse. It's an opportunity to reshape our economy with intention. Rather than scrambling to replace one big industry for another, we're shifting towards a broader, more diverse foundation, one that includes multiple sectors and community ownership. The GNWT's approach has been and continues to be focusing on empowering others, Indigenous governments, and communities that lead local and regional economic development. That means funding, reducing barriers, and aligning with community and regional priorities. Critical minerals, renewable energy, tourism, food systems, these are not just ideas. They're already being advanced through targeted investments, pilot programs, and partnerships on the ground. From 2013 to 2023, NWT real GDP grew by 71.9 million, as you can see from this chart. It's been a period of notable change in both growth and slowdowns, and the estimate for real GDP today is lower than it was in 2013. Right after devolution, the NWT economy saw strong expansion, peaking in 2018, when the GDP reached 4.54 billion. Since then, our GDP has struggled. And as you can see from this chart, real GDP never rebounded after the COVID-19 pandemic. It declined slightly in 2023 and has shrunk by over 1.1% in 2024 to 4.15 billion, followed by a forecasted sharp contraction of 4.3% in 2025, bringing real GDP down to 3.98 billion. This will mark the third consecutive year of economic decline, primarily driven by a 5.5% drop in total investment and a 7.9% fall in exports, largely due to declining diamond mine production and oil and gas production. This production highlights the continued challenges in our economy as the resource sector changes. On a positive side, this slide shows the growth we are experiencing in some of the diversified sectors of our economy that have been the focus of a lot in the last decade. So as you can see and know, the arts sector has gained momentum. It's also, this has led to an increase in local events for arts, crafts, events, and performances that enriches our communities and contributes to economic diversification. We've consolidated our arts programming into ITI. Secondly, agriculture. Small-scale farming and community-supported agriculture has flourished in the NWT. There's growing demand for local produce and sustainable food sources. Similarly, forestry, fishing, and hunting activities contribute to subsistence and also commercial opportunities. Food services and accommodations. This has increased and been supported by an increase in tourism, with visitors seeking authentic experiences and local cuisine. We've all probably seen a few of the recent motion pictures and films from the Northwest Territories. This sector has also grown, driven by an increase in local talent and storytelling. Film incentives and funding programs have allowed filmmakers to explore new opportunities and tell the story of our unique landscapes and cultures of our regions. Also, collaborations with Indigenous creators have created a diversity of content being produced, highlighting the importance of local narratives and the film industry. These sectors are small, but as they expand, they play a vital role in bolstering the overall economy, creating jobs and fostering culture and community development in the Northwest Territories, and these can work and do work in balance with the resource sector, whether it's critical minerals, expansions of the diamond mines, gold mines. The economy can be balanced between our core sector and also the diversified sectors. Thank you, Mr. Chair. 1 second, I've got one more slide left. The economic opportunity strategy has been fully operationalized as a long-term practical approach to building a diverse and self-sufficient northern economy with lasting benefits for Northerners and their economies. In the last couple of years, there's been a strategic and deliberate shift to better empower and fund others to strengthen our economy. The intent behind the development of the new economic vision for the Northwest Territories is a commitment by the 20th Assembly. And it is twofold. Create a concise visionary statement that can guide the NWT as a whole towards an innovative future state, and in doing this, guide work with important partners to create opportunities for Northerners, no matter where they live in the Territory. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. Just before we jump into questions with members, is it possible to share the speaking notes that would assist our staff in the write-up and, of course, committee work? I'll get confirmation from the minister. Thank you.
Yes, we can definitely share the speaking notes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much for that. That said, I'll go to the committee first. I have a bunch of questions of my own, but I'll certainly wait for committee. Does anyone from committee want to start off a round of questions? Okay. Mr. Julian, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First question is just a basic one. What progress has been made on the Economic Vision project, and when is the department working towards releasing it?
Thank you for that. Minister?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We continue to work on that on the cabinet side and look forward to, in the near future, being able to share something with our colleagues on this side of the House for their input as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Mr. Julian, again.
Okay, thank you. We don't have a plan for when we're going to release this. I mean, it's been in the business plan for, sorry, I didn't check the business plan before this meeting, but I thought it was supposed to come out this year. But I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's a bit peculiar to get an answer that it's being worked on the cabinet side. I thought it was a departmental initiative.
Minister?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So the member is right. The economic vision is due out this year as per the business plans. I can confirm that. The member's intuition was right there. And so it's our intention to share that as soon as possible with members on this side of the House so that they can have input into that as well, because we think it's important that the voices of all members of the 20th Assembly are included in that. Thank you.
Okay, I'll come back to you. I now have Mr. Rogers on the line who would like to ask you a question, then I'll go to Ms. Shauna and Ms. Kate thereafter. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly appreciate that. Thank you for the presentation this morning. I have a question around when I read the EOS, and I know the EOS informs our policy decisions and how we move forward with policy. We're talking about reducing imports. One of the things I don't see in there, and I realize the GNWT hasn't been I guess, on the front lines of this, is what, if anything, we're doing around our LNG supply we have in my region. We talk about working with aligning our investments with our Indigenous partners, and certainly in my region, as you know, one of the, if not the biggest Indigenous government up there has purchased a large gas well and are in the process of developing that for the region, and what happens in the future with that, we're not sure, but certainly for now to gasify that region, because I know, as the minister knows, we are currently importing propane and natural gas from BC to heat homes and to supply energy in the Beaufort Delta, which again to me seems a little absurd, but it's where we are at this point. I get that. So I guess you mentioned also about working with our partners, whether that's funding or whether that's reducing barriers. Can the minister give an update on where we are, if anywhere, in working currently with the Indigenous government on their preparations for that natural gas well, and what future they see as part of the EOS as potentially reducing our energy costs? We see our power rates again soaring this year. We've put tens of millions of dollars into power subsidies, yet we're sat on some much cleaner energy in my region. So if the minister could speak to that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Denny. To the minister, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, certainly there is a tremendous amount of opportunity potential in the Beaufort Delta when it comes to LNG. There is both the Mackenzie Delta LNG field, and there's also work that is currently underway on the M18 well, as the member well knows. Our work, as far as working with partners on that, has been to ensure that we are supporting IRC specifically on the regulatory needs and that relationship with the federal government, but also supporting their lead and their direction on the work that's being done with the M18 well. They are currently working on the building of the plant, and with the intention of supplying communities local to that region with energy needs. And from there, we continue to support beyond that on making sure that the world knows about the LNG potential of the Northwest Territories, including not just nationally with our partners that we sit at tables with, both myself and the Minister of Energy, so Minister Wozniak, but also ensuring that internationally people are aware of the opportunities and also the reduced transportation routes that occur when you're transporting from a pole to another region is significantly less than if you're transporting LNG from, for example, Corpus Christi or even Vancouver. So there's a lot of opportunity in the Northwest Territories, but finding the right partner for that opportunity is key. But it's certainly important that we take the lead of IRC on this work, and continue to work with them. And in this particular case, the lead on this work would be infrastructure, and ITI plays a significant supporting role. Thank you.
Any further, Mr. Denny?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that. Yeah, and obviously, an industry of that magnitude, if it were to be, actually become an industry in our territory, certainly that would maybe help with the what we've seen significant reduction in small business startups in the past couple of years as well. and maybe we could see some of that come back. The minister mentioned, telling the world and certainly telling our federal government, and I think right now we're hearing, or what you read, and we haven't seen any firm action on this yet, but there is a discussion in Ottawa around energy corridors and around building pipelines and around potentially, reinvigorating that, industry again. Can the minister speak to any specific engagement strategy she's aware of, either through the Minister of Energy or her department, and how we're actually approaching that with Ottawa as we move forward? Thank you.
Thank you for that. To the minister, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, in regards to how we're approaching this with Ottawa, Ottawa is certainly very well aware. We have shared the work that was done on the pre-feasibility study in regards to Mackenzie Delta LNG directly with their new cabinet minister, who shares responsibility on this one, and ensured that they're well aware of this opportunity. And so I'm sorry if I'm not answering the member's question, but if he's looking for more specific with the relationship with Ottawa, at this point, certainly ensuring that they're aware of the opportunity, the relationship with IRC, and making sure that we are supporting IRC in their efforts and not working outside of that relationship is critically important to us as cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you for that. If you want, I'll add you to the list to come back to in a bit. I now go to Ms. Shauna, followed by Ms. Gay.
You can call me Ms. Morgan. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what I'm struggling with here is that I'm not sure if we've defined what exactly is the government's role in economic development. We generally consider ourselves to exist within an economic system that is primarily, businesses are privately owned, and the market is supposed to sort of do its own thing, free market economy. And yet, we talk about that we're trying to redesign the NWT economy. We're empowering communities to lead economic development. So I'm trying to figure out, I think sometimes we imagine that we have this complete control over the economy, but we don't live in a system which is supposed to be government-controlled economy. And so I'm not clear what our theory is of the government's role and how that influences our actions. Now, I read through the regional economic development plans, which are quite similar to each other. And to me, they came off as kind of a laundry list of a giant wish list of ideas as to what someone somewhere could do if the government gave them enough money to do it. Basically, if the government spent a huge amount of money in any region, that would solve the economy. That's how I read it. But our reality is that government money is limited, so what are the most strategic sort of interventions or actions that could be taken to maximize economic benefits? And I didn't see that kind of analysis in the regional economic development plans, unless I missed it. And, possible theories or approaches. Is our theory that if we, put seed money into all kinds of tiny, small micro businesses across the territory, that at some point they'll sort of stand on their own and they won't need government money anymore, and that's how things will just sort of grow and build on their own? And if so, has that played out? Or is the theory that if the government puts a huge amount of capital into, huge mega projects, that the results will sort of trickle down into, local jobs and local businesses starting up on their own? Is that the theory of how this is all supposed to unfold? Or is the theory that we actually do want government-owned, businesses across the territory, but that they'll be owned by Indigenous governments across the territory, and that GNWT's role is to give capital and money to Indigenous governments, and they're going to sort of control businesses and own, resources? And I'm just sort of curious as to whether we've thought this out, because I think this really matters in terms of how we approach economic development. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Ms. Shaw. Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and not a tiny question by any means, and not one question by any means. So I guess a couple of things that I'll start with. The first question is, what is the role of government as far as economic development? I want to be clear that the role of government is not to start up and run businesses, but we certainly want to create an environment where people who have the energy and the drive and the desire and the passion to start a business are empowered to do so. And so that's where you see these different strategies for different diverse sectors of our economy that are kind of driving that investment across the board. And so we've got different grants and contributions within ITI, but even outside of ITI that exists in order to empower residents to become involved in and create the infrastructure and the resources, and to be able to build on that by attracting further investment to building those businesses. And so the idea there that the member alluded to is hopefully not to see people continuously come back at the same place in their business for more continued investment, but to see them use investment to drive their business to the next level, to drive their business to the next opportunity, and so that people are continuing to grow, because an economy can't be stagnant, and sometimes that's what we see is we become far too comfortable in where we're at. We need to continue to grow. An economy has to be a living organism, and it has to be a living organism that has that diversity, because we all know that something that is reliant on one solid thing is not realistic and doesn't continue to thrive and survive. And so what we've done is created different funding programs across multiple sectors that people can tap into. And we're providing, tens of millions of dollars to residents every year to invest in themselves as business owners. Some of those are startups where people are accessing, a few $1,000s here or there, sometimes hundreds of dollars. To people who are accessing over $100,000 in order to really take something to the next level. And so, acknowledging that our needs aren't across communities and across different persons and business opportunities, our needs aren't one size fits all, and we need to acknowledge that. The regional economic development plans was the next question. These were community-led ideas that really established what people saw as some of those economic development opportunities within their own communities and are a starting point for people. And we have programs that if people have, that drive, energy, and desire to see those businesses start up, that we have the programs to support them. We want to support people across the territory to do that work, but it can't be on the government to be business startups. Because then we're just continuing to grow our public administration. We're not continuing to grow an economy that is thriving and that is diverse. And so that is our intention. That's what we continue to do. I think it's worth noting that we have an upcoming economic development conference where we're bringing together all of our economic development officers that are both employed by the government, employed by hamlets, employed by communities, that are all coming together to share best practices, to share different funding resources so that everybody has consistent information across the territory and can support one another and really build a community of people that are supporting entrepreneurs to start up and to grow. We are also doing that work with our federal partners as well. And I think that's important to note, because there are people doing this work in communities, and we want to see their toolbox and their skill set continue to grow, so that we're not only supporting this from here's a bunch of money, but we're also supporting it from the perspective of how do we support people to take those steps to start, to take the steps to get to the next level. In terms of the question of the member in regards to, is this funding to scale up? There is, the funding pockets like SEED. There's funding pockets within that are both grants and loans within Prosper NWT as well, and other departments within the GNWT. In addition to that, childcare is a great example that comes from education, culture, and employment, not ITI. And then we also have the larger scale opportunities that we have our Minister of Strategic Infrastructure working on. And one of the things that we hear the most when we are talking to potential investors and is the need for energy solutions in the territory and the need for roads in the territory when it comes to, for example, critical mineral and mineral extraction opportunities in the Northwest Territories. So we have a minister that is dedicated to that work so that we can increase our size of our pie and increase investment into the territory. The idea there is as soon as we have kind of those strategic pieces of infrastructure, it's much easier for another company or business to come in and invest in an access road instead of an entire public highway. So we do have some infrastructure needs in the territory that can help us increase our size of investment. But certainly one of the key roles here for ITI in this sector, beyond providing those initial supports for business startups and business growth, is the partnership and the connecting of different people and that investment attraction piece. So not just ourselves attracting investment, but making sure that we're connecting our partners in economic development to some of those relationships, whether they're national or international. So, long-winded response.
Thank you, Minister. Michelle, please. Does this work?
Thanks to the minister for that response. It was, to be fair, a long-winded question. To give a more targeted follow-up question, what are our measures of how successful we've been? If the idea is to, just to take one piece of that, if the idea is to give seed funding to, small businesses that are starting up and hope that they will grow and build on that and attract outside investment, what results have we seen? Are small businesses attracting outside investment? Are they growing? Are they becoming independent of government funds? Like, are we tracking that? What are the indicators around that? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. Minister?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Chair, I would like to start this, and then I'd like to pass to the Deputy Minister to be able to add some more granular information. We've certainly seen growth of sectors across the territory. We've seen, different, and I mean, it's been certainly a challenging one where we saw growth right off the hop, and then we had, things that we could not predict, which were things like a pandemic, geopolitical situations, the rise of lab-grown diamonds, which certainly has had an impact on some of our lifespans of our diamond mines that we were hoping to see slightly different. But we have seen successes across the board and continue to see more interest in some of our more diverse sectors within the territory. Film is a great example where we have seen great return on investment there. And then we've also seen, for example, the growth of, not just when we talk about public administration, I think people look to growth of the GNWT, but there's been growth of Indigenous governments as well, which is a win for the whole territory. And so I think it's important to look at not just the changes in sectors, but also why that change occurred and the rebound that's occurring in some of them as well that we're seeing. With that, Mr. Chair, through yourself, I'd like to pass to the Deputy Minister who can provide some more granular detail.
Thank you for that. Deputy Minister, can you please?
Yes. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think what really is important as we look at our program funding envelopes is the reporting and the performance measures. So we know under the Government Renewal Initiative that every new initiative needs to have these in place. For ITI, we are working our way, and committee will be receiving these reports. We've completed the Community Transfer Initiative, which funds our economic development officers across the NWT. We're just finalizing Community Futures right now, and the next big one is going to be the review of the SEED program. And so right now, within our programs, we have reporting. So looking to ensure that our programs are meeting the goals, if they have goals, because some of these are programs that have been in place for 10, 20 years, long beyond us. And what we're finding is it's very difficult because we get reporting for that fiscal year, but then how do we follow that employer that have received the funding through many, many years? Because, they might have created a half a position in this year, but is that position grown and has the business grown? So we have to figure a way on how we can assess that because our funding is on an annual basis. So we'll be looking at that in the seed review. I think that'll be an important part, conversation, and maybe with committee as well, on how we embark on those measures. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I now have Ms. Kate, followed by Mr. George, and then we're going to start with second round thereafter. Okay, please, when you're ready.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for your presentation. I think I want to build on some of what Emily Morgan was speaking about. However, I also just want to maybe, if the minister will indulge me, discuss how this ties into some of her other role as Minister of EC. So when I do briefly go through the regional economic development plans, what stands out to me the most is the rates of employment outside of our larger regional centers and capital. So Yellowknife, Inuvik, Fort Smith, Haight River, these sorts of places have fairly good rates of employment, but when you get into smaller community, the rate goes down. So for me, it's interesting listening to you today, and it's interesting listening to the work that's been done, and know that this persistent issue continues. So if we're choosing winners and losers based on just the amount of people who are in a space and have access to certain education opportunities or economic opportunities in various retail sectors that might not exist in, or retail or any sector that might not exist into smaller communities, what are we really doing to put the pedal to the metal for folks who either want to, get an education to develop business plans or get into some of the programs that you have available? What are the pathways that connect between your two departments that you want to see measurable improvements so that we have more people employed and more people perhaps starting up small businesses, which is something that is more likely feasible than finding a external investor, possibly based on the geology of an area in a smaller community that may or may not have resource development. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Minister?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So within ITI has EDOs and also works with EDOs within communities. Education, Culture, and Employment has the career development officers, and there is a cross-section that is happening between the work that's being done by the EDOs and the CDOs. So they're aware of the different programs that they have available to support one another and are able to work more closely together. One of the things that I've asked for is that the career development officers be included in the training that is happening with the economic development officers, so they're getting cross-training and understand what each other is doing and the different opportunities that exist for the residents that they each work with, so that they're able to work together and people can get consistent information across the board, which I think is incredibly important. In addition to ECE and ITI both having people that work regionally and are able to work directly with residents. They're in response to the member's question about, for example, business plans, people can use seed funding in order to create business plans for different opportunities as well. And so there is the ability for them to have access to someone with experience in business who can help them work through that process of drafting a business plan and creating it, to take their business idea from an idea to something that they can then turn around and secure infrastructure funding for and carry forward. And so they can, what we have seen in the past is people work with kind of coming back to seed, so starting with the ask for business plans to be developed and then coming back for kind of some of those startup costs. And then being able to stack funding as well with federal partners is what we've seen in addition to that. We do have great successful examples of that. One would be the recent building ribbon cutting that happened out in Cam Lake with North Slave Métis Alliance. They were able to first come for the business plan with seed, then come back for some of that funding to start the development of their building and work with Canmore as well. And so we do have some successes that we've seen in the territory, both in Yellowknife and outside of Yellowknife as well.
Thank you for that. Just before I go back to the member, I want to say that was an interesting usage of pedal to the metal. I have not heard that in years, so. Days viewer. Ms. Kate, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I guess my 80s rock hat is on, I don't know. So thank you to the minister for that. So I also would like to just sort of put a shout out to Prosper and WT, and as an organization that, you know, has the opportunity to work with, you know, business and business ideas. But would there be any sort of inclination from the minister's department or from Prosper to work more closely in some of our smaller communities to really hear what people are needing and where their ideas are forming such that, you know, I don't know, not necessarily a town hall, but like some opportunities for people to see the scope of opportunities that are available to them through both organizations. I understand you have staff in perhaps maybe not every community, but in all regions. But I find, at least myself, I'm much more of an auditory learner. So when I hear something and I digest something, it's where I can find my best ideas and work things through and sometimes create new opportunities in my mind. Where do you see the work in both of your departments having positive impacts on some of our employment numbers and in terms of self-employment in that regard? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. Minister, please, for that detail.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. To the member's first question, do I see opportunity? Yes, absolutely. I think, you know, the member and I have had conversations before about the power and value of more time in community and less time in cubicles. And I think that mentality relates absolutely to this conversation right here. And I know I've had the same conversation with both Deputy Minister of Education, Culture and Employment and ITI as well. So to the member's first question, yes, where do I see opportunity? I see opportunity in when we talk about pathways to entrepreneurship or even pathways to employment, pathways to education. I think that the government has a tremendous amount of programs that exist. One of the challenges is making sure that people understand that those programs do exist and how to access them. And I think that we can do a better job on communicating those across the territory.
Sure. Please, Ms. Kate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yeah, thank you for that. I think that's really crucial. And although I'm not here to tell you how to dictate the Premier's work with integrated service delivery, for example, but I think pathfinding and pathfinding services should always be top of mind for any government department and making sure that, and I know the minister loves to tell stories and starts out every presentation as a story, and that's great, because that connects with people and that gets into their minds and gets them thinking of new things and new opportunities that they might have not seen before them. So if anything I can take away from, or have the minister take away from this is to make sure that we are increasing those pathfinding opportunities for residents so that they know what's available to them in all of our communities. Thanks, Mr. Chair. More of a comment, really. But the minister can speak if she wants to.
Minister, would you like to respond to that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with the member, and I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity. And in addition to that, you know, there's lunch and learn opportunities that are available to people and that we can continue to grow on. I think there's also opportunity to learn how we can also work, and maybe this is a topic then for the conference that we can add in, is how we can empower people regionally to get out of the office, have these conversations, and learn how they're already having the conversations, and is there a way to support them to double down on them? So thank you.
Mr. George, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. You stated that engagement with communities started but hasn't been concluded or finished. Visiting every community or every organization, it'll be good, you know. Will this will you and your department be finishing this process of consultation with the other, communities within the smaller communities? We have EDOs, but not every EDO is, able to go out on the radio or go visit and explain what options her department has in reference to small business and expansion. And your department, there's a lot of opportunities within these smaller communities. My 3 communities within Mackenzie Delta has very limited mineral resources activities at all, so we're looking more at cultural activities. So will you and your department look at visiting some of the communities if an invitation is expressed to see what is available to the communities and the residents of these communities? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Minister, if you would.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Chair, the regional economic development plans that were done in the last assembly captured some of the opportunities that were available in all regional communities, and those were published, I believe, in 2023. And beyond that, the work that's being done with the conference that's coming up with the regional economic development officers, every region's economic development officers are invited to come and participate in that, and we're hoping to see, our goal is to see 100% of people participate in any way that they can. I know that sometimes people have stuff that comes up, and so hopefully they're able to loop in with some of their colleagues in another fashion if they can't make it there in person, but that's an opportunity that's certainly open to everybody. And from that, while it's an information sharing piece, it's also an opportunity for people to come together, share best practices, share what they're doing and what's working in their own communities. And we know that community radio is so popular and such an effective tool. And so wanting to both share ideas, but then also have people be able to learn together and to form those relationships that they can take beyond this conference and continue with. In addition to that, we have almost $20 million in grants and contributions from industry, tourism, and investment that's available for regional businesses. And one of the things that I hear the most about when I have the opportunity to tour around the Beaufort Delta and Mackenzie Delta is about tourism opportunities and the amount of people that are coming through, and making sure that we're working both with NWT Tourism and communities on creating some of that infrastructure and pointing people in the right direction of funding that might be suited to the idea that they have is critically important, and one that our regional staff continue to do. In regards to mineral opportunities and some of the work that's happening there through yourself, Mr. Chair, I'd like to be able to pass to Deputy Minister to share some of the other pieces that are ongoing in the region as well.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Minister, if you could help with Mr. George's question, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And yes, there is some exploration going on in the Beaufort Delta and the high Arctic community around those communities for several commodities, largely critical mineral focused, a bit of diamond work. And we have been aware of that, and I've spoken with our pathfinders and our community relations advisors, and they're going to be planning a couple trips up to Ulu and Paulatuk to talk minerals. So we'll make sure that committee knows when we're going up there, and also through as well as, well, I could talk about minerals forever. There are also a number of other opportunities further west, but still up in the Beaufort Delta, such as Ghana River, which is an old occurrence that's being looked at now for new commodities, base metals, with some really cool minerals within there. So it's quite exciting to see some of these areas being reactive again. We know it's not cheap to operate in some of those areas, but as transportation corridors open, we've just witnessed last week the opening of a new gold mine up in Nunavut, and they're going quite strong up there with investment for gold. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. Anything further?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah. I, I said limited mineral resources within my 3 communities of the Mackenzie Delta, just went to another region, but that's all right. We have one venture that's happening in Fort McPherson. Is the fish camp within the outskirts of the community, and just placing signs around the community saying that the fish camp welcomes you, and arrows directing them where. And this summer I've seen a lot of tours go in there, and they have this site say driving the Dempster, and on a daily basis you see posts from tours saying, if you're passing Fort McPherson, make sure you stop at the at the fish camp. The fish camp is run out throughout the summer, and they want to expand into the winter for other like activities, moose hunting and other activities. But they're also looking at social problems where they can. It's not very far out of town. It's walking distance, 5 minutes out towards the river, and they want to expand and help residents with their addiction problems. Set up tents or places where they can stay there for a few days and out of the community. Although it's not very far out of the community, but it's safer, they feel. They want to expand to other, like moose hunting, like you stated, other activities. It's prospering because of the tourists putting posts, and there's actually other people, tourists coming and going there, spending a few days there, spending a few days within the community. We have a couple of campgrounds within the vicinity of Fort McPherson, and that's helping with tourism. We don't have a lot to offer in terms of restaurants or anything like that. So, and the employment opportunity from this fish camp it's about maybe between 10 and 20 people. They rotate on a weekly basis, and gives other people the opportunity to work and enjoy a little life other than walking around the community. How can your department and the administrators of this venture work together, to expand for the future, and with tourism already playing a big part in this consultation, community consultation is important. I don't know if these administrators of this program have even talked with the economic development officers to see how they can expand more. If they can get advice from some business people within the department on what else is available to them. What can your department do to work with these administrators to give them some hope and to carry this program on, not from year to year, but maybe throughout the year, expand rather than 4 months, maybe going to 6 to 8 months a year. Just what do you have available for them in regards to advice or financial resources? Just to give them some opportunities. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And thank you for that. Minister, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I think this is a great example of how different departments can work together as well. So for example, there's the community wellness funding through Health and Social Services. That sounds like it would be a key one that would afford some supports. But then we also have the tourism product diversification and marketing program within industry, tourism, and investment. And we've got almost $6 million specifically for tourism, and that's not even in addition to the other funding pockets that we have for business startups. So this sounds like a great opportunity for our regional economic development officer to work with the community. And if the member wants to provide us with a contact for this business operation and wellness operation, we can certainly make sure that our economic development officers are in touch and can do a session directly with them and work through some of these ideas and point out some of the different opportunities for funding that are available. So I think this is a great opportunity to have a sit down directly with people and a great opportunity to get out of the cubicle. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. Looks like Mackenzie Delta got everything they asked for. Okay, folks, that's the first round, so we're now able to continue through. Does anyone have a second round? I think I have Mr. Julien. Yes, please. Yeah, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I want to focus a bit on the economic vision, and the reason I'm doing this is just because it's clear to me that the previous economic strategy has kind of come to an end, and we're working on the next one. So can the department discuss what kind of economic analysis that's going to be applied to vision development, and how the vision is going to be put forward in such a way that it considers the various problems the NWT is facing? Can the department kind of just discuss the process they're going through for vision development? I haven't seen anything go out yet, so I'm just kind of wondering where we're at. I mean, when the minister spoke about it on the floor, there was talk of kind of doing lots of engagement, getting regions involved, Indigenous governments. So I'm just curious what the process is going to look like and how we're doing it.
And thank you for that. Minister, if you would.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'm going to start off with the members' kind of comment in regards to the economic opportunity strategy winding down and coming to an end. And I think it's really important to note that the work that was done on the economic opportunity strategy hasn't wound down and hasn't come to an end and hasn't stopped. It is very much a strategy that continues on because it gave birth to a number of other strategies being that were listed out by the Deputy Minister in the presentation. I don't want to miss anything, so I'm going to turn back. But, you know, we had everything from the commercial fish strategy, or the fish revitalization strategy. We had the agriculture strategy, the film strategy, the petroleum resources strategy, the manufacturing strategy. We had the immigration strategy, and then we also have the tourism strategy, and in addition to that, the art strategy, that have all kind of been born through this work and that continue to stand today and continue to come in different reiterations as they go. Another key piece of this is that the work that was done as kind of a foundational piece through Common Ground and the economic opportunity strategy then really became integrated in the day-to-day operations of industry, tourism, and investment and its business plans. So it's not something that we are having to reproduce the strategy, but it really did become how ITI does business. So we need to invest in these other sectors. How are we doing that on a daily basis? How are we supporting the pathways to entrepreneurship or pathfinding, for example, for our mineral economy as well in the territory. In regards to the economic vision, I think it's important that we look at what our goal is with that. And our goal at this point, while we continue to focus on a diversified economy in the Northwest Territories and how we continue to support the birth of new business, we need to continue to attract investment to the territory. We need to increase the size of our pie. So the key work, and I think the most important work that's going to come out of this economic vision is an investment strategy as to, then that's kind of the next piece to come, is how we work together to attract people to the territory and not just people, doctors, nurses, teachers, and skilled workers that we need in order to continue to grow our own skilled workforce. But how are we also attracting investment that builds roads, that, invests in the knowledge economy, that invests in research, that invests in different pieces that we want to see continue to evolve in the territory. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anything further from you?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, I think it's, what I'm trying to get at is, I made a statement about this a couple sessions ago or sittings ago, and talked about the need for economic analysis to guide our decision-making. And I want to try and connect a few dots there and see what the minister or department has to say about it. I mean, the government produced an economic review as part of its budget document that kind of shared a state of the economy, which, shared a lot of effectively bad news, shrinking, the economy's shrinking, we're losing industry, we have inadequate workforce numbers. What I felt was missing in that economic review was a response to those challenges. And so I think that is there in the regional economic development plans. What I think has kind of been missing, though, is analysis of how the government can be most effective at addressing these problems. And so when I made that statement, I shared the economic analysis report done in Greenland. I tabled that document. And that analysis got into what can government be most effective at doing? Where can government kind of target its actions? And so that's where I'm going with the vision, is trying to understand, maybe the regional economic development plans continue to be relevant and they are guiding our actions, and if that's the answer, that's okay. I had the impression that this economic vision was being created in order to carry forward new action or new ideas, or help kind of create a strategy around how we can change things. I'll leave it there because I'm curious to hear what the department has to say, as opposed to just throw my own ideas to how I think we should be visioning economic development. But I'm curious to know how development of the vision is going to go.
Thank you. Looking for a volunteer. Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, in regards to the member's last comment about how he wants to hear what the department has to say, is he inferring he'd like me to turn to the deputy minister?
The department?
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you. No, I just want to make sure that I'm hearing you properly. No, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Chair, I'm going to speak as a politician, and then we can get into department stuff first, or after that. So, one of my beliefs is to do the work to make sure that we're supporting those who need our support and essentially get out of the way of the rest. And so what I mean when I say that is we do have barriers to economic development that exist in the territory. And I think part of the work that we need to do in order to make sure that we are, when the member talks about being effective and being efficient as a territory as far as our economic development, is uprooting some of those essentially barriers to economic development. And so that's some of the work that's being done right now within ITI. But that work doesn't only happen within ITI. That's an all-of-government approach, because those barriers don't only exist, for example, within the Mineral Resource Act. They exist in regulations across the territory or in processes across the territory. The beauty of ITI is they hear from industry first what some of those are and how some of those can be achieved. And so I think that our wins here are in that kind of level of nitty-gritty, and us being honest about what those are, and then prioritizing what we're going to deal with. Because we have a tremendous amount of legislative and regulatory pieces that we'd like to see amended in the territory, and we have a limited number of legislative drafters to get some of that work done. So we're in a process right now in the territory where we have to prioritize what's our biggest bang for our buck and what's going to get us there. The other piece of of work that continues to happen is the government renewal initiative, where departments are working to review a lot of their programs, and one of those within ITI that was recently done that the Deputy Minister alluded to was the Community Transfer Initiative. We're working on Community Futures now, and our next piece on that is the seed funding. Some of those are our core pieces of how we support entrepreneurship and business development in communities, and some of them don't have the policy work that they need in order to, for example, be accountable through reporting and measurement. That's incredibly important. And so that work is being done because we need to be honest about where we're at and where our wins are and where we have the opportunities to grow. And then some of it is making sure that these programs continue to evolve with the state of our economy. And so that work is currently underway as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. You did offer to ask the Deputy Minister, and I know she's just a wealth of knowledge. It's your call. It's your,
Oh, no,
it's your
absolutely.
team, not mine.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would love to pass to the Deputy Minister.
Okay, and she looked eager too. She wanted to jump in. So, Deputy Minister, if you would, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So yes, ITI does have an economic analysis unit where we've got a couple economists. Scott is one of them. So yes, some of the work is already encapsulated in our business plan. For example, we're working on sectoral analyses for some key sectors, like take the fishing sector. So we can see what the opportunity is and where that sector can go. And so we do that work, and it helps guide our programs. One example that the minister alluded to is, what are the barriers in these various sectors? We can do an economic analysis on what the barriers are holding us back from achieving. And then that prioritization piece is really important, because a lot of the barriers are not sitting within ITI. They can be, pieces that sit within other departments. So we will and are looking at that from a broad base of overall, where do businesses see the biggest barriers, and can we break them down? One analysis that we're working on right now, and that doesn't really sit with ITI, but the meat regulations. What opportunity might sit by having the meat regulations completed and implemented, which takes time and also needs budget with it. What opportunity in our economy could be created if that was an enabler? And so, yes, ITI does do that work, and we're pretty excited about it. As we use that as part of our planning for programs, and also how we work with other departments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. I don't have anyone else on the queue. All right, well, I'll come back to you if you have anywhere. Shona, please. Please, if you would.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to ask, so one of the goals of the economic strategy and development planning that you mentioned was reducing dependency on imported goods and services. And I know this is just sort of one of the goals, but I find it, we tend to throw out sort of all of the good things and in this one in particular, I'm wondering if we're actually measuring or monitoring. If this is something that we've set as a goal for ourselves, have we set a target? Are we measuring? Are we reducing the imports of goods and services? Is it just that we're looking to expand the amount of goods and services in our system? So if we have more local products, it's sort of adding to the pool of goods that are out there? Or are we looking to actually reduce how much is imported, and therefore are we actually measuring that? We assume and hope maybe that something like the commercial fish plant, will reduce the amount of imported food, but are we actually checking whether that's happening? Anyway, that one in particular, I wondered if that is something that is important to the department, and if we're measuring it, and if we're actually having success, or what steps you would actually have to take to make that happen if that's a main goal. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And thank you for that. Minister, if you would.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'll start, and then I'll see if my colleagues would like to add into that. I think that one of the goals is certainly reducing the import, of the original EOS, and luckily we have somebody at the table who worked on the original EOS, and so has so much corporate history, and I'd love to also pass to Scott as well, but One of the goals certainly was to reduce the amount of import of goods and services to the territory. One of the focuses of any region across the country is making sure that we can be self-reliant. And that's one of the things we have heard so much about internal trade, is not only just being self-reliant, but also how can we support one another in that as well, so that we're also working as a country, but then at the same time, the North is different in that we're in our infancy as far as our economic development. We're in a different situation than provinces. And so we certainly in the territory want to make sure that we are growing our opportunities, but that we don't find ourselves in situations that were certainly highlighted during the COVID-19 pandemic of how reliant we are outside the territory. You know, we have seen over the years different campaigns for Shop Local. That helps grow our business. It helps create sticky dollars in the territory where we are continuing to reinvest in one another rather than investing in businesses south that continue to feed us. So in no pun intended, that's where we are seeing some of the growth is in agriculture, is in, you know, rebound of the fish industry as well. But certainly we do hear a lot of desire to continue to see growth in the manufacturing industry in the territory. But that's where it's so important that we work with our industry partners, because we aren't the manufacturers as government, but we certainly want to ensure that we have a regulatory environment and support programs that support the growth of businesses who do want to do this stuff. So we have seen some changes recently, and we will continue to see more changes to the manufacturing policy based on what we're hearing from industry. Colleagues, would anybody like to add to that?
Yep, okay. Thank you, Minister. I'll go to Mr. Ray for, no, we have automatic mics.
Okay.
We have a tech team that does it all.
There we go. One of the underlying tenets we had when we were working on the US was what we called made in the NWT. What can we do that has less reliance on the South? What was our focus? And one of them was the diversification. Hence our work in agriculture, our fishing, our manufacturing. So those were kind of the core things that we heard when we went to the communities and when we brought people in, is that we want to be less reliant on the South. And what can we do as a government to make investments to grow these sectors? And that was kind of the initial foundation that we had worked with in 2012 and 2013.
That's anything further, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And certainly I understand that has been sort of a really driving goal or inspiration or motivation probably since, 2000, before that, since the strategy started. But my question is, it's 25 years later, are we less reliant on Southern goods and services, let alone sort of workers that we're bringing up from the South? And I would argue that I don't think we are, although I don't have numbers in front of me. I don't know if you have numbers to actually measure the amounts of imported goods or services or our reliance on them. But at some point, if we keep saying this is a real goal of ours, but we're not achieving it, we have to either reevaluate, is this important? Maybe we don't care if, communities are importing all of their food or whatever. Like, maybe that's okay. I don't know. But at some point, we either decide it's not that important or we do something to change how we're going about it. Because I don't think we're more self-reliant in terms of our goods and services now than we were 25 years ago. So what can we do different? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, we can certainly access those numbers and provide them to committee as best we can from NWT stats so that we can share exact numbers with committee. I mean, some of those numbers are publicly available on the NWT stats page, but we can see what else they have that can break it down a little bit more that we can provide to committee. I think that there are also changes over the last 25 years in what we consume and how we consume as consumers that would drive changes to that. And so you're constantly working with an evolving system. I think that everybody at this table can also admit that, yeah, we are still reliant on the South. We're reliant on the South even for physicians and healthcare workers, more so than we, probably were 25 years ago as well. That would also be reflective of our changing demographic and changing demographic across the country of how much work hours we get out of people, and not just hours out of one person, but work hours out of society as a whole, given our aging population. So I think there's a lot of data that adds to that changing dynamic and that drive. But I'm not in a position where I would want to say we divest from that, because I think that a desire to be more self-reliant means that we're continuing to create pathways to entrepreneurship. We're continuing to empower our youth to have the skill set they need to be entrepreneurs and to have the tools in their toolbox to be the things they want to be. And I think part of that as well is continuing to improve our education outcomes. And I think that all relates to this conversation, and those aren't pieces that I'm willing to let go of or lighten up on. I think we double down on them. Thank you.
Ms. Shona, I don't have anyone else currently. Did you want to go back? Did you have anything, just in case? All right, that's good. All right. Oh, I knew I had you, but I just didn't know if there was more you wanted answered on that. Okay. Mr. Gillen, please, if you want.
Thank you.
And I think there's no one else after that other than maybe a question or two from me, and then we'll work towards wrapping up the presentation if members are comfortable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I wanted to get into the regional economic development plans themselves. I focused on the economic vision a little bit here, but so looking at the regional economic development plan, particularly for the North Slave, I noticed that there's a couple of things that came out of it that were that were listed as the highest priorities. And I think I hear the minister saying that we need to focus on reducing barriers, focus on what the government can do best as opposed to trying to be industry. So two of the things listed in there was development processes, permitting issues, and other regulatory issues was rated highest. Higher still, depending on which side you looked at, was access to skilled workers. So those are two big things. And I think that it's important to highlight those two because those are two of the things that we have the most control over. The third one, of course, is access to land and resources. So I guess I would ask, there's three things that we have control over. I've heard MLAs raise concerns about, including myself in various different ways, but I haven't seen, the government come forward with a strategy saying, here's what we're going to do about regulatory. We are going to solve these problems. This is the legislation we're going to pass during the term of this assembly, and here's all the actions we're going to take to address this as a problem and shift the narrative. The next one is education. In the regional economic development plan, it talks about the great opportunity that shifting Aurora College to a polytechnic will be. This is going to happen in 2025, that we're going to build a new North Slave campus. That project kind of fell off a cliff over the past couple of years and has really not come to fruition. And the next one is access to land and resources. MLAs have been kind of going back and forth with the ECC minister about why are we not transferring land over to the municipalities? Why are we not better increasing land? So all three of those are issues that I haven't seen a huge amount of movement on, and yet they're issues that are identified in our economic development plans. So that's why I was starting to focus on the vision in terms of, I think that we need to start concentrating on the issues that we have the most control over as a government, things that we ourselves are in control of. And focusing on what changes we can make and quickly to address some of those challenges that are dogging our economy and some of the goals that we have. And I think the difficulty with it is I understand that a lot of that is outside of the control of ITI. And so the challenge is going to be, how do we address these issues as a government? And so it's kind of a challenge for more than just ITI. I think it's cabinet as a whole to look at some of these challenges. So I would just ask, knowing, well, I think I've kind of laid out a question there, but can we get a bit more strategic and kind of government-wide? And I heard the minister talk about that in her answer to my last question about addressing some of the challenges, in particular the ones that we have the most control over, the ones that solidly lie within the government's wheelhouse. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Minister, if you would.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, the member is right. I don't control every department or every area that, you know, certainly has an impact. I think it's important that we acknowledge that so many of our challenges are interconnected within the government, and that's why it really takes, it requires departments and ministers to work together on these. In regards to the first piece that the member highlighted, so regulatory issues or access to land and resources, ITI along with ECC and Minister MacDonald, along as well with the Premier, have been working closely together on you know, a multi-department approach to this, because it has been a long-standing issue and one that we are committed to sorting through. And when the member for Great Slave earlier today referred to almost economic ISD, that is exactly what we are approaching. So, you know, there's the integrated service delivery for our social departments, but we certainly need that integrated approach to our economic development pieces as well, especially regulatory, that is so unique in the territories where it brings together multiple levels of government and multiple stakeholders essentially in supporting industry to work through the regulatory environment. So that's what we've been working on the back end, along with the federal government, to make sure that we're supporting industry to work through the process, and we're reducing not just redundancy, but perceived redundancy within industry. That's incredibly important to us, so that we're supporting people to work through the process as efficiently as possible and without driving up unnecessary costs. So that's kind of that first piece. And then also access to land and resources also relates specifically to strategic infrastructure. And I can say that multiple ministers are working very closely together as far as our relationship and engagement with the federal government to ensure that understanding how strategic infrastructure in the Northwest Territories and investment in those projects is not just a win for the Northwest Territories, but a win for the entire country, and relates very, very closely and directly to the priorities of the federal government itself. So that work is happening there, and I do take the member's point that I think that talking about some of these wins and some of these projects in a much more public way would serve the whole territory in a positive fashion. In regards to access to skilled workers and the work that's being done on that, certainly there is a tremendous amount of work that is being done, not only as far as building access to skilled workers, you know, locally here in the territory, but also making sure that we are positioning ourselves to attract skilled workers to the territory too. And that happens on multiple fronts. I'm happy to say that our access to, or asks for, student financial assistance this year are up 20%. So a lot more people in the territory are accessing post-secondary education than ever before, and that is certainly a win when we talk about our desire to access a skilled workforce. There's still definitely work to be done, both within our post-secondary landscape, but then also within our JK to 12 landscape as well. And one of my focus is that equitable access to education piece across the territory that I think is so important. And some of that work that is rolling out right now is in our inclusive schooling area. That is incredibly important, and also working directly with the Minister of Health and Social Services on the therapeutic services piece, and that to me relates directly to equitable access. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that attendance is still down across the territory, and really I think that takes leadership on so many different levels right across the territory to support and really work through how we can work together to support students to be in school. I think it's worth noting that if a student misses 1 day a week of school, just 1 day, by the time they get to grade 12, they've missed 3 years of school. And our students on average are missing more than 1 day of school a week. So attendance is critical. Thank you.
there's nothing further. Oh, one more? Sure, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just coming back to one of the responses I got to a previous question, you know, the minister mentioned that they, I think it was in response to regulatory, you know, there's a number of things we can do. We have a limited number of legislative drafters. And I guess I would just ask, I mean, if we have a limited number of legislative drafters and that's what's holding us back from achieving a goal, why are we not shifting positions to increase the capacity where it's needed to shift that narrative as opposed to being victims of it? I mean, if passing legislation or legislation reform or, you know, like, I'm sure there's a number of actions. I'm not sure exactly what all of them are. I mean, some of them were listed in Sketty's report on the regulatory system, but, you know, if we have a limitation that's preventing us from achieving a goal, I would like to see us come forward and say, this is the limitation that we're facing. We are going to shift resources because this is a priority and we want to get movement on it. So can the minister respond to that?
Thank you. That's a good question.
Thank
So
you.
was the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Chair, this is not a challenge that is only faced in the Northwest Territories. It's faced across the country. Certainly, if there are students looking for an area to go into that is in high demand across the country, legislative drafting is also one of them. And I think it would be important for me to only speak as far as Minister of ECE and ITI in this case, but certainly within both of the departments that I have the opportunity to work directly with. Prioritizing legislation is one of the exercises that we are certainly live to and doing on a regular basis to make sure that we're being responsive to the asks of residents and of this assembly, and making sure that at the end of the day, we are being as effective as possible. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, I'm going to squeeze in a couple before we call it a close. If members have exhausted their energy on questions, I'll jump in with at least a couple. So, not taking away anything from we'll call it the cottage industry initiatives, but in just speaking in the context of a platitude, you know, like, it's not easy to replace a mine, that said, but to grow the arts industry, we'd have to multiply it by 30 times to start getting competitive with those types of things. To be comparable, we'd have to multiply the current agricultural industry by 12 times. And again, these are just round numbers in this context. But my question really is built around, what's the territorial strategy on growing the GDP through these economic initiatives? So in other words, do you have a target that focuses in on GDP? So in other words, GDP is pretty clear. Employment seems a pretty clear, easy one to say. Are there more people employed or small businesses as in new and emerging, not just replacements, new and emerging, so a net gain. So what is the roadmap of this, and where would we see this type of analysis or targets transparently seen? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, I certainly have to acknowledge that you had a hand to play in the assemblies that created these strategies, and so I just want to pay kudos to your role within economic development and supporting these strategies going through. You're absolutely right that any of these sectors are not going to replace the $1 billion diamond mine. If we had an arts business that replaced $1 billion diamond mine, I think we'd all be very ecstatic. I know some of us try to purchase enough earrings to do that, but we're not there. But it was never meant to replace $1 billion diamond mines. It was meant to ensure that we at the end of the day have a diversified economy where businesses are supported to grow and empowered to grow within communities. We continue, though, to acknowledge that our mineral extraction economy is our leading GDP driver in the territory, and continue to support projects and our advanced projects in the territory through investment attraction. We are working quite closely with industry and with Indigenous governments on the Critical Mineral Infrastructure Fund applications. So we have provided support letters and worked closely with the federal government to ensure that they understand how these projects are connected if they are, and what the significance is not only to the Northwest Territories, but also to the entire country that is working to build supply chains for critical minerals. In addition to that, we also have our MIP program, where we're investing in, a lot of times, our junior explorers across the country to make sure that we're continuing to see new developments in the territory or new discoveries. And then we also have our Northwest Territories Geological Survey, who continues year after year to stack funding with the federal government to ensure that we're continuing to evolve in that space. I'll also say that the Northwest Territories is part of a pilot project with the federal government to use artificial intelligence on our past core samples and test for further minerals, so that we're also using technologies in the place of traditional exploration as well to see what's out there, because we know we've got a lot of cool rocks, and finding out exactly what is where is critical. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Is there any targets built into that initiative? And everything you said, I can't disagree. I certainly appreciate the background that you provided. But do the economic strategies look at, for example, we want to see, and I'm just picking numbers here, so I'm just saying, 3% overall GDP growth, 4% employment sector, and 4% growth in the arts industry, 3% in the cottage, craft industry, et cetera. Do we have that type of strategy? So in other words, do we have targets that we're saying that we want to align our economic strategies towards? Say, we know where we want to go, net growth. We want to see small business grow by 3% overall. That includes the net outcome, as opposed to, we just gained 10, but we lost 40, type of thing. That's not growth. As a matter of fact, that'd be a step backwards. That said, so anything can be run through statistics to give us a message that we want to tell, but I mean, it's good to have a roadmap to say we want a net increase on GDP, employment, and small business, as well as other factors, not just limited to that. So could you elaborate as to how the EOS supports those types of focus to see core net growth? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Chair, the EOS itself was designed in order to ensure that we're creating those foundations for economic diversification. As far as numbers of where we're headed and where we're going, those are found in our business plan. And so those output type numbers that you're looking for are what we've identified in our business plans going forward. But the other thing that we look at is trends, because like with every province and territory and economic foundation, our goal is to always grow, and our goal is to always make sure that we're evolving with economic trends to make sure we're supporting industry in the way that they need to be supported. And it has long been a desire of not just this territory, but every territory and province to continue to see population growth as well, because we know that population growth brings diversity and also brings new ideas and new investment. And so seeing both our GDP but also our population continue to grow is certainly a goal of ours. In addition to that, rather than me speaking to some of this, I'm wondering if I can pass to Scott Ray for some more information. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Mr. Ray, if you would.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the things that we wanted to accomplish during the EOS was just not a plan that sat on the shelf, but was trackable. So from 2013 to about 2018, we did produce a number of progress reports that tracked 12 performance outcomes linked to strategic objectives. I've got a little bit of information here from 2018, so this is historical, but I think this speaks to what you were looking for. We didn't set targets, but we wanted to track what we were working on. For instance, in 2018, we wrote that there was a 28% increase in annual tourism licenses from 2014. So we knew that there was almost a third increase of people looking at getting into tourism via the tourism licenses. We saw 30% growth and a 37% growth in visitor spending via tourism. We saw a 78% increase in registered artists, film, and the film and media sector grew by 150%. Commercial fishing license increased by 27%. And at this time in 2018, we saw our harvest go up 42% and 55%. So we did do historical progress reports that weren't linked to targets, but just tracked what the U.S. was meant to do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll just monopolize time just a little bit. That said, is there any reason that isn't continued? So that's actually exactly what I'm curious about as to how we see reflection of investment changing the story. Is there any reason why it wasn't continued after 2018 from the sounds of it? And to me, that's value. And then that speaks to your targets, your strategy. I'm not suggesting don't invest in small cottage industries that help bolster opportunities in other areas. I'm saying that we should have also targeted outcomes that we're shooting for in other, like plan. So is there any reason why either you don't do it, or is there a reason why you might want to restart it? Minister?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Chair, the outcomes of each of those are tracked under the specific strategies now versus under the original EOS. So, for example, arts would be under the art strategy, fisheries comes under fisheries reporting, and it's tracked as in our annual business plans. Thank you.
So I guess maybe just to wrap up, the reason I'm focusing in on this is trying to say that where I'm driving a path towards is, are we investing in things that actually drive or increase the GDP? That's where I'm trying to sort of build the Lego blocks to, like pieces fit here and pieces fit there. It's great to invest in things that have gone up 100%, but keep in mind that it's $0.1 million is now $0.2 million, which is really $100,000 in growth. But it looks like 100% growth. And, we can say we're growing in this industry 100%, but really the response being is in, it actually hasn't really driven a whole lot in the economy. But if you said you grew 3% in the mining sector, that could be like $50 million. I'm just making numbers up without in front of me. But the illustration is more about, it's how you project your investments and your statistics and how you communicate that message. And that's what I'm trying to drive at. So we're the sharp tip of the spear, or being on the vanguard of opportunity here is saying that how do we target initiatives and investments that actually drive larger growth? And that's really ultimately the pieces I'm trying to bring together with this question. And is there a strategy on saying, we want to put a lot more emphasis on areas that bring larger growth, because larger growth also means larger jobs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So some of that, there are examples of that work being done. So a great example of that is film, recognizing the multiplier impact of that industry and the tracking that happens and the economic analysis that happens within the Department of Industry, Tourism and Investment looks at those trends and looks at those success stories. And that's where we were able to really not just double down, but 10 times down on our investment in film over the course of this assembly because of that multiplier effect that was happening. It's also important to remember that GDP doesn't measure everything that we want to measure. And so one of the significant drivers of diversifying our economy is community wellness, because you don't have a mine in every single community, as the member for Mackenzie Delta pointed out in his comments. And so ensuring that we have these other economic opportunities that will never stand up financially to the GDP driver of a mine is critically important, because employment, we know at the end of the day, is such an important piece of the health indicators of communities, not just the economy, but of people, because that's what we're talking about at the end of the day is people. But at the end of the day, you're right that, these other economic diversification pieces will never replace a diamond mine, but they weren't meant to either. And I think that's important to remember. As far as, you know, having this information, while it exists in different reporting spheres, if it is the ask of committee to have some of these updated numbers brought into kind of one information sheet back, we can certainly do that for committee as well.
Actually, you jumped towards my last question, which was when we talk about the RDPs and all these investments and where we see these, including workforce, how do we consolidate that information, and how is that, as opposed to going to each individual plan or target? Is there one document? And if you're able to provide something back that you just offered, that would be helpful for committee at large. So, last question, please, if you would. We have people.
Yeah, I know,
We have awesome people. You're taking away a job.
don't know how I'm having trouble with the microphones at this point in the game, but, okay. So I'd just like to kind of close off with sharing what I'd like to see in our economic vision and the strategy that flows from it. And I think, to put it succinctly, I'd like to see us take a coordinated approach to the challenges listed in our economic review and analysis. And I think that it's important to note that that economic review and analysis that we produce every year is a great starting point for what problems do we need to be focusing on, because I think it laid out in just a couple of pages, here's all the challenges we're facing. The NWT is facing a lot of challenges, but it didn't kind of go into, this is how we're going to address them, and I think that's where ITI comes in coordinating approach. And then having some analysis as to how this government can be most effective at addressing each challenge across departments with clear goals and responses to the challenges, not just noting that the challenges exist as if we have no control over them. And I might suggest that we prioritize the challenges that we have the most control over. So those are just some thoughts. I guess it's not really a question, but I wanted to get the thoughts on the table while we're having the discussion, and would welcome a response from the minister. Maybe I'm going in the wrong direction in terms of what the vision is going to be. Maybe we're going to kind of stick to the regional economic development plans. But as I pointed out earlier in the review, I mean, I think there's a number of things in the regional economic development plans that we have a fair bit of control over. And I don't know if it's our communications or just, you know, the government does a lot, and it can be sometimes hard to see from this perspective all the things that are going on, and whether or not the approach is coordinated, because sometimes it just needs to be laid out in kind of a document or a website or something like that to help us understand what's going on. But yeah, those are my comments on the vision. I'd be interested to hear the minister or department's response on it. Thanks.
Fair enough. Any thoughts, Minister?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So I can certainly talk to the Minister of Finance in regards to that economic analysis piece that shows up in the budget address booklet every year. But that is something that is definitely led by the Department of Finance. But I can commit to following up with the minister and seeing if there's opportunity for that. In regards to prioritizing the challenges that we have control over, prioritization is certainly the key word there, and making sure that we're evaluating which one of those, you know, amendments or pathways has, first of all, the greatest economic potential, but second, the biggest impact per resident, I think, is critically important, so that we're not doing something for the sake of doing it because it's on the list. But prioritization to me means, who does this impact? And at the end of the day, is it going to have the greatest impact for residents, to make sure that we're being as effective as possible at the end of the day? And the last piece there in regards to the economic vision, I think it's important to note that because we have these other strategies in play, and we're working really to make sure that we're continuing to evolve with what the people are looking for at the end of the day, and where people want to invest their time and their energy and their passion. That the economic vision really is just that. It is a vision that we can all take forward as we are making economic financial decisions for this territory, but it is not to replace a strategy. It is not an action plan, and I think that's critically important. because I'm definitely seeing that there is a different kind of expectation as to what this document would be. It's not a replacement of the economic opportunity strategy by any means, and I'd be more than happy to sit down with the member and have a broader conversation about that for sure.
Okay, thank you. Not saying anything further, I was remiss because one of the reasons we're here today is going back to one of the concerns I'm having, which is how are we developing economic opportunities throughout the Northwest Territories, and we kind of got there with that question in this roundabout way. And so I'm going to squeeze in just a further comment here and maybe just a small question as we wrap up, but one of the approaches I started thinking about in January, which is, do we not have, like, for example, a blue chip advisory committee providing ideas? And if memory serves, I think a few years ago there was a published article in Outcrop. I think it said we had $4 billion companies in the Northwest Territories. Now, I certainly hope there's more. I'm not going to name them, but you know, I certainly hope there isn't less. I mean, but that said, we have people who know and can identify initiatives and opportunities. And is the department getting outside advice, and how is it reaching out to others that are either A, too busy for government, or how is it calling upon fresh ideas? Because we can keep tilling the soil internally, keep tilling the soil of our always the same partners. And I'm not saying they're bad people, but if you just keep going to the same people, you're going to keep getting the same advice. And where some of these large magnets of industry would be able to look and say, you know, this would work really good in Sigachik, why isn't someone doing this? You know, Yellowknife needs to reorientate its economy because this is a growing industry, and no one is waking up to see this lion that's coming, tsunami that's coming, and a tsunami of opportunity by all means. And somebody may say, and Hay River, you know what, maybe the rail isn't the way to go. Maybe these are the ways to go. And all of a sudden it causes, like I'm saying, these people with these types of initiatives, and we all know them, you know, because A, they're too busy, B, they're making money, or they're getting old and retiring, but they have lots of great advice to offer to inspire opportunity. And would they do it themselves? They can't do everything. So I'm guessing I'm bringing it back to is what type of outside advice or outreach does the department do to help sort of foster and develop these types of initiatives? Because I guarantee you dropped a particular type of entrepreneur in in any town, and all of a sudden they'd be running the town with 20 businesses by the end of the week. And so your thoughts, Minister, on that particular concern?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Chair, industry tourism and investment is constantly meeting with industry partners. But that can be through coordinated associations like NWT Chambers of Commerce, Yellowknife Chambers of Commerce, Community Chambers of Commerces. There's also a tremendous amount of touch points with Indigenous development corporations from across the territory. And in addition to that, Indigenous governments themselves. And that's at kind of corporate level. Then there's also the touch points that happen regionally with community members outside of offices. Sometimes it's in offices, sometimes it's outside of offices. And that happens not just with ITI, but with multiple departments, and including Prosper NWT. I had the opportunity to travel to multiple communities and have had the opportunity to sit and hear from people who have ideas and connect them with either regional directors or Prosper NWT themselves. And have had the opportunity as well to sit and chat with people who do have ideas and connect them with different programs that they might be interested in. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we can connect people with programs, we can connect people with one another. But it's important to remember that the government we don't want the government running business, because then we're not creating a healthy ecosystem. But we want to ensure that people are supported and feel supported at the end of the day. And so if people have ideas as to how that can evolve and how that can change, I certainly want to know about it. And I know that the Deputy Minister and the department does as well.
All right, thank you, folks. Looks like we've come to the end, but not the end. All right, so I want to thank our presenters for today's presentation. I also want to thank the public for following along. And as always, I'm very appreciative of our millions of subscribers that hang on every word on our social media site. That said, it has now brought us to a close. I wish to thank the minister and the department for your time today. It's been most helpful, and the engagement has certainly been worthwhile and enjoyable. Thank you very much. May I wish everyone a lovely day. Thank you.